Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. So, we're going to talk about how long should you fight for your marriage before divorce. How long should you fight for your marriage before divorce? This creates a lot of confusion for people in crisis. So, one of my clients suggested this yesterday because this was a battle she fought for a long while before she found us. So I was like, wow, that's fascinating, right? How long fight for your marriage, right? It's fight for your marriage. What does that even mean? Because that can also be quite confusing for a lot of people. What does that even mean, to fight for your marriage? Some people, they don't believe you need to fight for a marriage. It's not as simple as should you fight for your marriage or should you not fight for your marriage. It's really not that simple. Let me make sure I'm on the right microphone. Great. All right. So it's a little bit more than just, again, trying to prove that you're better or that you can stand on your own. Anytime you come from a place of you're trying to prove something, that's actually weak. Okay, that's actually a weak place to come from, because ultimately you're not acknowledging that you're a human being like the rest of us, and in due time the truth of that will show up, which is the fact that you are in fact human like the rest of us. All right, so if you want to operate from a place of strength, you first of all acknowledge your state. Okay, fighting for your marriage, it's a very delicate thing, right? How long should you keep fighting for your marriage before you finally accept divorce, if that's the way to go, right? Should it be 3 months, 1 year, 5 years? The uncomfortable truth is what I want to share with you today. Time is not the real measurement, guys. Time is not the real measurement. Okay? Well, I'm just going to give you this amount of time. That's an ultimatum you're essentially giving to yourself and not necessarily to the other person, right? Some people wait 10 years while doing nothing but begging, monitoring, arguing, and hoping, praying, going to the mountains. And others, they use 6 months to completely transform the energy, leadership, the direction of the marriage. So today I'm going to show you the difference between powerful patience and powerless waiting. Let me put that on the board. Powerful patience versus powerless waiting. Powerful patience versus powerless waiting. All right, so I'm going to show you the difference, right? Patience and waiting almost sound the same, don't they? Right? They almost sound the same, but they're not. They're not the same. So obviously, context matters, and that's what I want to break down for you today. And I'm also going to show you how to know whether you are saving your marriage or simply just postponing the pain. Welcome back. Do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications so you're notified when we go live. All right. Now, before we dive into today's lessons, before we dive too deep, if your marriage is actively in crisis state right now and you cannot afford to wait for these daily streams to figure out piece by piece, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Go there right now and book a one-to-one discovery session so we can map out your exact scenario privately. All right. So how long should you fight for your marriage before divorce. How long should you fight before divorce? I have two pieces of information on the board, right? You have fear, right? That's the present state. That's the reality. If you find yourself in this position, you're going to have fear. You know, every one of us will have fear. However, you don't have to operate from a place of fear. You're precisely going to do that if you try to pretend that you're not a human being. You're going to have fear nonetheless, and you're going to operate blindly from that place. And the goal is clarity, right? You want to save your marriage? Yes, you can save your marriage, absolutely, right? But you're not going to do it without clarity. It's not going to happen. And if you do it without clarity, it's probably not going to last. How many people do you know, they'll save the marriage, they go back and forth, they stay in toxic marriage, they go back and forth for so many years, like I said, 10 years. So some people, before they finally pull the plug, some people just patiently wait until they become empty nesters, right? The kids are out of the house and there's nothing left but just the two of them. So seemingly like they've been waiting, but not really. It's just, yeah. Some people call it patience, right? So the reality is some people will wait for, when the coast is clear before they pull that trigger, or maybe it's just too much and they look at the rest of their life like, is this how I'm going to spend the rest of my life? But you actually want to save your marriage, right? So it seems like it's taking so long. So how long should it take? How long should it take? When she checked out some years ago, my wife, Lola, I had no guarantee that she would ever return. I don't know if it was going to take 3 days, right? Because I'd never seen anything like that before, it was something like something I'm paraphrasing now. Something like I don't know if I can do this anymore. You ever heard that before? Yeah, no, I don't know. I think we're done. So the breakthrough came when I stopped treating time and space like a manipulation tactic. Okay. What do I mean? Ultimatums. So again, we have the state of fear, we have clarity, and I'm going to show you a loop, right? A terrible loop, a fear loop, right? And that most people go through, that really, really makes things really bad. Things get worse. At best, people create a very bad form of. Let me just put this here. All right, I'm going to show you this right here. All right. So they go in circles, in circles, in circles. Again, the goal is clarity, right? We're trying to get to clarity. And yes, you want to get to saving your marriage. That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. But I'm trying to show you a path to get there, as opposed to what will naturally come to you. So when you have fear, right? You're like, okay, somebody taught you that you should be patient. Because I'm one of those who, I'll tell you, especially if you cheated, I'm going to tell you have to be generous with patience, right? Because that person's going to take their time to process what happened. But there are also certain things that you would have to do on your part to actually help to make it easier on them, right? There's certain things you have to do. So one of those things might sound like waiting, but there's a difference between waiting and patience. Patience is rooted, it's grounded. We'll talk about that in a second here. But what people usually do from a place of fear is they go into this waiting mode. So we're going to go through a path of waiting, which is what most people do, right? They go to the state of waiting, just waiting. Some people, they call it praying. There's nothing wrong with praying, but that praying better be backed up with something, because faith without work, right, is dead, right? So people keep waiting. You might keep waiting because somebody said, just wait, give them the chance, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, what is happening but behind the scenes, what are you just waiting around? You're gonna get tired of that, right? Because it's, again, you're a human being too. Sometimes you get frustrated. You will say the things you don't want to say, and you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the thing you said while you were waiting is actually making matters worse. And just because you said something and you said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that," doesn't mean it's gone, right? It becomes another seed that is now being sown. Now, hopefully, you'll be sowing some other seeds so that that gets overwhelmed. But usually, people just, they just float through that process. And anyway, a lot of people wait and they now monitor. They start monitoring the move, right? They monitor, is she breathing? Is he still looking at me? Does did he go out to the clubs yesterday? Where exactly was he yesterday? And sometimes that's not even enough. They still want to get a little bit more details. It just gets worse and worse and worse, because eventually that comes back and affects their reality. So some people go into monitoring mode, right? Monitoring mode. Dangerous stuff, guys. Dangerous stuff. Some people go into monitoring mode. That's not what you want to be doing with this time. You're literally missing out on life. But I get it. I understand, because you want to save your marriage. So your natural instinct want to kind of monitor that process all to the end. This is often after people have gone through therapy, counseling, and all this kind of stuff. Usually, if you're obsessed with the idea that you want to save the marriage, which I don't judge you, I don't blame you, you will engage all this type of behavior. When you start monitoring people, we're spirits. People can feel it, right? It becomes pressure. It becomes pressure, guys. Now, if you've noticed, if you're following our training here, pressure is becoming a recurring theme. Is that a good thing? No, it's not. Okay, the last thing you want that person to feel is pressure. You want them to decide to stay just because they want to stay. Okay, but there are things, again, that you can do to help them in that direction, and they cannot be controlling in nature. Okay, they cannot be controlling in nature. You have to be super careful about that. And pressure will lead to more rejection. Okay, what do we know about rejection? What do we know about rejection? When you experience rejection, do you just be like, "Oh, I'm rejected, I'm just gonna stay on my own"? Remember, we're talking about married people. We're talking about, you're married to this person, but you're in a state of crisis right now, and now you feel rejected. So it doesn't even have to be outright rejection. You just have to feel rejected. What happens after rejection? Rejection breeds what? I'm going to wait for you while I'm putting that on the board. Pressure leads to rejection. And when I say rejection, keep in mind, they don't have to outrightly reject you, but they do things that make you feel rejected. They're not giving you the affection that you crave so badly for, right? The same reason why you went through this path: waiting, monitoring, pressure. Rejection leads to obsession, guys. It leads to obsession. Rejection breeds obsession, or you can call it desperation. Right? Desperation. Right? Rejection breeds obsession, desperation. Right? Desperation, and then more fear. Right? So you start looping through this very bad fear loop that just only makes matters worse all the time. It just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse, because it gets bigger and bigger, and then eventually it just It looks like it's waiting, but it's not waiting, because again, you feel the need. You want what you want, right? You want your marriage back. You want your marriage back. So again, there's no surprise here. It's just showing you what is going on underneath when you don't know what you're doing. This is a major problem that people go through when they have found themselves in a place where there is the marriage is broken, right? So as opposed to, okay, let's find out how to do what we can do to help make this issue a little bit to alleviate whatever is going on, right? People just enter this zone of fear, and it just gets worse and worse, and they go through this loop that just makes them even get rejected even more. So and all of that consumes time. It's a process, consumes time. It just gets worse. So it can, on the surface, looks like you're waiting, but it's powerless waiting. It's powerless waiting, and that's what you're trying to avoid. Okay, so that's not patience, guys. This is not patience. What you're looking at is fear loop, and fear tells you that you're running out of time. Desperation, obsession, right? It tells you that heaven is going to fall out of the skies today, right? It tells you that maybe you won't wake up to tomorrow. So what do? What does that look like? You don't say it outrightly, but that fear, that panic, that feeling of you are losing and it's going to get worse and worse, that literally makes it happen. That projects it, and it makes it where it expands it, because what you focus on expands, right? It tells you you're running out of time. So you wait, but while waiting, you monitor everything. Is that really waiting? Right? Monitoring everything, what does that consume? It consumes time, it consumes energy away from you. And you can't afford to be pouring from an empty cup. Precisely what people do when they find themselves in this bad state. Someone say, well, you deserve it, you deserve to pay for it. Well, no, not really, because nobody's perfect. Okay, you did what you did, but now you want to rebuild. So if you're going to rebuild, you need to be you, so you can actually rebuild. You need to be at least your bare minimum best self, so you can actually rebuild. And going through this fear loop is not going to help you do that. So going through a state where you need to monitor the other person needs to be a certain way before you can feel yourself again, that's going to make it worse. You lose yourself in that process. Losing yourself, does that sound like a good thing? No, it is not. That's not a good thing. So you wait. While you wait, you monitor everything. You're scanning everything. And you monitor the phones. You're monitoring their location. You're monitoring their tone. Right? You get obsessed with monitoring affection. How many times a week? How many times? How long has it been? Right? Naturally, because again, this was a marriage. It's supposed to be a marriage, right? So I don't blame you. You monitor every word they utter. Monitoring, unfortunately, whatever the intentions are to rebuild your marriage, to save your marriage, is actually going to create pressure. And they can feel it, right? It creates pressure. You're predictable. You get rejected. You feel rejected even the more. The pressure creates even more resistance. Resistance and rejection. And rejection, like I just said, breeds obsession, right? It increases desperation, and desperation literally take you back directly to fear, and then you're going through that loop over and over and over and over again. And you can literally spend years inside this loop and call it fighting for your marriage. But nothing productive is happening. Productive with the objective of saving your marriage is not happening. It's actually making it worse, right? And you're basically you're confirming to that person why they chose to reject you in the first place. It's like every move you make confirms that, yeah, this is a bad idea. I got with the wrong person. They're just waiting for the day they have the courage to pull the trigger finally. And time by itself does not heal this cycle. In fact, this cycle will consume time. Time merely simply gives the cycle more opportunities to repeat. Keeps going like that direction. All right. So it's a very common thing. Okay. Um, I have a, I, I have a client when they came into the program. She genuinely wanted to rebuild the marriage. Okay, she was the one checking out, as a matter of fact, and she genuinely wanted to build the marriage, but unfortunately, intimacy had disappeared. Right, engagement was inconsistent. She would try, but the reaction she got met with basically confirmed to her that it's not gonna work out. Everybody say you should fight for your marriage, right? Everybody say, hey, don't just leave, right? Especially in this time and age, that it seems like people just up and leave. I don't believe people just up and leave. Sometimes they've tried everything, right? So the real crisis was not whether to stay or leave, all right? That's not the real crisis. The real crisis is that she felt like she was outsourcing her future to someone who clearly did not know how to participate in that future. That's a very difficult process to go through, right? But there are methodologies and there are strategies to navigate that. But I'm just telling you, somebody is fighting for their marriage just because you decided that you want to fight for your marriage. It's not, it's simple, but it's not easy. Because, like I always said, there's another person involved in that process. There's another person involved. So, as long as there's another person involved, it's not going to be as simple as your intentions. Your intentions need a little bit more. It needs skills. Skills. How do you translate fear into clarity? Because that clarity, you're going to need it. You're going to need clarity before you can move forward. Okay? And that clarity, you need it as soon as possible. And that's what I wanted to take some time to drive you through today. Okay, I have another client. You know, separation is a very difficult process, right? Oftentimes, people suggest separation, maybe because they just couldn't get way ahead, right? Sometimes the court will suggest separation before they can actually grant people divorce. So this particular person, attorneys were already involved. Property, property talks and custody issues have already been involved in the conversation. Relationship had turned to a legal battlefield, but yet they're fighting for the marriage, right? But there's anger issues. Yeah. So when you have anger and you have all these conversations about property, and by the way, lawyers are not necessarily your friends, right? They just want to get paid. It's a job for them, right? So oftentimes, a lot of people go to lawyers because they're looking for them to feel better. Lawyers don't necessarily make things feel better for you. No, that's not their job. Their job is to represent your interest from a legal standpoint, right? But this is what happens when a marriage decision is driven by accumulated pain, right? Again, it goes back to the fear loop. There's so many things, there's so many activities that can go on within that loop. And it's not as simple as what it looks like on the board right now. Just look at all your life activity and just now plug that into fear itself, right? So until you decide that, okay, what I need is clarity. I need to know where I stand today without waiting for other people's life journey to decide where I stand today. If you can find your way to that space, I think fighting for your marriage or how long, that conversation will become a lot better. Okay? Because again, it's not about time and space. You're giving yourself ultimatum. You're giving yourself pressure. And of course, what are you going to do to give to the other person? You're going to give them pressure, right? So if your goal is to save the marriage, the last thing you want to do is give them pressure. Okay? And if you have pressure on yourself, desperation, obsession, that's exactly what you're going to give to them. So that's what we're trying to clear in this conversation. All right? So I would say this, stop asking, how long should I wait for the marriage? How long should I fight for the marriage? Stop asking that question, because time is not really the measurement. Movement is the measurement. Are you actually moving forward, right? Are you becoming more grounded or more desperate, right? Is there accountability or just promises? It's a good question to ask, right? Is the relationship producing confusion, right? If it's creating confusion, clearly you want less and less of that. That's how you measure if you should wait or you shouldn't wait, right? At least from a standpoint of at least ask the question. Are you rebuilding attraction or just pressure? Right? So you're on the side of you want to save the marriage. Are you creating pressure or you're building attraction? Attraction, especially with the damages that come with this type of process, before you get here trying to fix it, attraction is going to look slow in the beginning before it takes off, similar to an exponential curve. So it's a process, right? Are you practicing patience or you're just basically postponing a decision because you're afraid? Maybe you're on the receiving or the giving end of divorce, right? These are the questions, because again, you can wait for 5 years and make no progress. I can't tell you how many people, okay? Just waiting. And that's your life moving in front of you like that. And that's usually cost you quality of life too. You can spend 6 months reclaiming your power and completely changing the direction of your life. Or you could be waiting forever. Don't measure your marriage crisis only by the calendar. Okay, time, it is what it is. Everything in life consumes time anyway. So you have to kind of take control of that. You want to measure it by the patterns you're seeing. Participation, right? Participation. What do I mean by that? I want to be careful with participation because we're talking about you. You are the one that matters. Okay, so how many people participation do you need if you want to rebuild yourself so you can have the capacity to attract love, quality love? You only need one person to start that process. Okay, you only need one person. So when I say participation, please take that with a pinch of salt. Accountability, the only accountability that counts is self-accountability, because it helps everything else. Okay, it helps everything else. Naturally, as a human being, it's a social human being, social butterfly that you are, you will be obsessed with holding everybody else accountable but self. And it's difficult to hold yourself accountable. Direction. These are the kind of things you want to pay attention and who you're becoming during that process. Anyway, let me just say this. Some of you are going through this and you know what time it is. And I want to encourage you. Okay, you're struggling because you lack patience. Okay, you're struggling because you have no clear process for evaluating a process, right? And what is a SMART goal? It has to be measurable, specific, measurable, right? You set a goal, but the goal is just is in the hands of fate. And if you need help, identify whether your marriage is moving forward properly towards reconciliation, remaining stagnant, or sliding toward divorce. You can book a discovery session at getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Now, let's get more in the direction of clarity, shall we? Let's go more in the direction of clarity. How long should you fight for your marriage before divorce? All right, so we've gone through the fear loop, right? Going through the fear loop. Fear is inevitable. If you feel like your marriage is slipping through the muds, you will have fear. Especially if children are involved. If you always counted on, when you committed, you felt like this would be forever. For whatever reason, somebody did something, you're growing apart, attraction was never really there, you feel like you married the wrong person, all these things will creep through your mind. But really, we need to go from that state. We need to get to a place called grounding. And you can get there today. You can really start from there today. When I say grounding in a source of truth, grounding in gratitude, grounding in God. So I'm going to put that on the board so we can get started with that particular path right now. Let's see. All right, so over here, I'm going to put grounding. All right. Now, let me explain grounding to you a little bit. Sometimes I may say something here, somebody will run with it, right? And they will go carbon copy paste that particular piece of advice, right? And they will be like, oh, but you said this once upon a time. And then suddenly what I said once upon a time is being applied wrongly because it wasn't grounded, right? It's fluffy, it's flaky, it's a flaky idea by itself. It needs to be grounded in a why, right? Purpose. It needs to be grounded in a purpose, right? You can't just say you should do this thing or call something the right thing to do without an objective, right? So that objective becomes a grounding, right? That's a form of grounding. We call it the source of truth. People will call something is just a truth, but truth with respect to what? Right? You can state like there's a difference between truth and fact. You can say this number is 2, right? That's a fact because we wrote 2 on the board, right? But if you say, well, this person is on a level of 2. Level of 2 with respect to what? On what scale, right? So you can say on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a level 2. That's grounding. We can say on a percentage rate, right? This person is growing at a percentage rate of 40%, right? That means you're measuring multiple things together. This source of truth, as opposed to just throwing out random ideas. Grounding, right? So if you're going to ask how long should you fight for, right? It will depend. A lot of us are afraid of the word depend. They call it being on the fence. You need to choose a side, right? They say, here, you have to be on the side. No, I don't. What side of what, right? First of all, understand my objective. Understand what I understand as objective. Do you have the patience to have that understanding? Because if you don't have the patience, then it's just that. Because at the end of the day, there's always some kind of source of truth. But it's a matter of, have you taken the time to assess it, to understand what it is, right? So, but what do? We try to manipulate, right? We try to manipulate our way through it, or we make this assumption that everybody is coming from the same place. The reality is that everybody is coming from somewhere, but we're not necessarily all coming from the same place. This conversation is what I mean by grounding, right? You want to save a marriage. Why? Why do you want to save a marriage? What happened before? What's the context? What's the backstory? How did we get here? It's the same reason why people will say, hey, marriage has no manual, because they mostly lack the patience to walk through how we got here or where we're going, right? So, or even where we are. A lot of people struggle to know where we are. A lot of people struggle to admit that you have fear in this moment in time. If you can't even admit where you are right now, if you can't acknowledge, if you can't identify where you are, how can you possibly trace a path to where you're trying to go, right? Hence, clarity. Okay, so grounding is the first step in that. We need to be grounded in a source of truth. The source of truth doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be a starting place. So what is the next step after grounding? What's the next step after grounding? Grounding will help you detach. Okay? Remember, we were just talking about obsession, right? Grounding will help you detach from anything that looks like obsession. Because if you operate from that place of obsession, it can easily translate to confusion. Okay? You just be confused. That's when people say, but I tried this, it didn't work. But I tried that, it didn't work. But I tried that, it didn't work. What didn't work? I've tried everything. We have tried everything. Really? What is everything? What is everything? Who prescribed the everything? Are you trying to say that you're just frustrated with the process? Oftentimes, when people say that, they're just saying they're frustrated with the process. Let's get back to obsession for a quick second, right? You need to detach from any form of obsession, right? So anything that will make you obsess over this process is going to create the opposite direction. It's going to create the opposite it's going to create results in the opposite direction of your intentions. You need to detach, okay? You need to be grounded. You need to be self-sustainable. Self-sustainability does not mean you defy gravity. It means you're able to stand on your 2 feet all by yourself. So whatever you want needs to start from there. So grounding will help you detach from every form of obsession, because honestly, whatever happens, you're okay. You're gonna be fine. Some say, but what if I lose my wife in the process of patience? Let me ask you that question. What if, I'm going to ask the question right back to you. What if you lose your wife in the process of patience? Can you live? Can you be happy again? If you can't be happy again if you lose your wife, maybe that's why she's running away from you. Maybe that's what's creating the pressure, right? Just maybe, just something to consider, right? See, that time to really process things in this direction is time that you're allowing God to work on you. And of course, God is working on the other person and not the pressure you create, right? That pressure is going to lead to rejection, to obsession, and then back to fear, right? We're trying to avoid all of that. And when you detach, you have clarity. You have clarity, and from a place of clarity, you're able to go into a place of self-leadership. Now, let's go through that real quick before we continue. Clarity, leadership. All right. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to connect it to the one we have on the board here. Okay. And now we can move more in the direction of self-leadership, self-sustainability. So here we have the 3 core pillars. We have GPS. The G is grounding, right? God, gratitude, right? Gratitude in the sense of all of this can be worse. Obsession is fear, like this is the worst. Like heaven is about to fall out of the skies, or hell is going to break loose, right? But as opposed to that, you're able to say, no, nothing crazy is happening. I have gratitude. I'm grateful. Things can be a lot more worse. What do I have? Let me do an inventory of what my life could be if I appreciate what I have right now. If I take time to start celebrating where I am right now, the little pieces of where I am right now, that's called appreciation, right? Knowing where you are right now so you can actually create a path into the future, right? Creating a path into the future as opposed to maybe hopeful, maybe one day the future can come here, and then what happens? You start applying pressure, right? You start monitoring everything, and that becomes pressure. That's what we're trying to avoid, right? So clarity leads to self-leadership. It leads to, I'm just going to put self-leadership. You finally become yourself, hopefully again, right? Because there's no way you go through separation, divorce, and looming around your head, you lose yourself. Sadly, that's one of the things that happens, okay? But now you're able to gain clarity, you get back to self, which is your source of sustainability. Your source of sustainability is not the other person. If you do that, you're going to put them on a pedestal. They're always going to fall off that pedestal. Because that person is just, they're powerful enough to control your life, but that's a human being. They're also trying to find their path to happiness. This is where people struggle, guys. They're also trying to find their path to happiness. All right. So now we're going somewhere. Okay. Once you get back to self, now you're able to move forward. Okay. Self leadership creates movement. Okay. And when you're moving, you're able to have real evidence. That evidence is going to create a loop of clarity for you. You become more attractive. Yes. And you increase the chances of actually saving your marriage, because nobody wants to be with a person that doesn't have a path forward. All right. So self is going to create the movement you're looking for. That movement is going to become evidence, and that gives you more clarity. All right. So let me go through here. Let's put this here. Movement. All right. Meaning growth. All right. Meaning you actually have a sense of growth. Finally. Right. You can literally see it. You can track it. You feel a lot better. All right. And I'm going to put evidence here. Evidence. Because you can see it. You can say, hey, I've done this. I've achieved this in this amount of time. And that gives you even more clarity. That leads to confidence. Okay. That leads to, that takes you completely away from the idea of being obsessed with how long should I fight for your marriage. So even when it comes that if you have to make certain decisions and go in a certain direction, you now get to choose if you want to save the marriage or not. You now get to choose if you want to save the marriage or not. And that place of autonomy, agency, is where you want to be at. You don't want to be in a desperate position, guys. Yes. No. Everybody can now tell that I'm a terrible artist. All right. Movement creates evidence, and then this loops back through clarity, and then you become a better version of yourself, and then you can choose if you want to save the marriage or not. Because saving the marriage, there are specific steps and process through that. And of course, because you can't put your life on hold forever, but you will have a better clarity. Because when people are asking how long should I fight for a marriage, it's usually like a blurry thing that you're going through, and you're wondering, like, is this how it's going to be for the rest of my life? And I completely get that. But it's a place of confusion. That's why you're asking that question. And what we're trying to remove is that confusion altogether. We're trying to remove that confusion. All right, we're trying to get rid of what? Confusion. So how long you're depending on this other person to make a decision if your life should move forward or not. That's not okay. That's not all right. All right. And they may never be able to answer that question, not from that desperate place. You can't have them ask. You can't be waiting for them to decide that for you. Okay. And no, it's not as simple. It's not as lame as, let me just go give them an ultimatum. You have 3 months or else I'm just going to leave. Or that tells me that you're operating from a place of no power too. Right? Why do you need them to decide before your life can move forward? There's a way you need to carry yourself, right, with confidence that naturally leads to moving forward. And people, they know they're going to get left behind if you're moving forward. Because what? Because there's evidence. There's evidence. They can see it, right? Unlike all you're doing is monitoring, they can feel the pressure. There's arguments back and forth. The arguments are confusing. There's really no objective in the conversation. Sometimes somebody thinks that's communication. That's not communication. That's confusion. That's confusion, guys. I hope you were able to gain some clarity from this today. I really do. So how long should someone fight for a marriage? Why should anybody fight for a marriage? No, we're not talking to you. We're talking to those who want to save a marriage. How long should you wait fighting for a marriage, right? I think that's the wrong question. Okay? I think that's the wrong question, evidenced by the confusion that created the question in the first place. The different type of question you should be asking. Okay, what are the questions you should be asking? I'm going to go over that in a second here, but before I go over that, let me just share this real quick with you before I wrap up. Okay. Oh, interesting. Before I wrap up, let me leave you with this. Okay. During today's lesson, you find yourself thinking, he's describing my marriage. Don't go back to guessing. That's what's creating this kind of confusion. Don't go back to guessing your way through it, because clearly you want to save the marriage. But the reality is that every marriage is indeed different. Every marriage, every relationship have their own history and their landmine, their personalities and their curveballs and the blind spots. And that's why I offer a private discovery session. We'll spend 1 hour looking at your specific situation, identify what's actually happening in your relationship, and then we'll help you gain clarity on your next best step. So if you're ready for that, just go through getmymarriageback.com/discovery. That's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Now, what are the questions that you should be asking as opposed to how long should I wait? You should be asking, are you becoming more grounded or more desperate? Okay, you should actually write that down and assess it and self-reflect. Ask, is there self-accountability? Okay, self-accountability on your part. Focus on you, because I just said self. Focus on you. It's very easy to get obsessed with the other person and start making it about them, and that's right there. It's like, where's your self-respect? Okay, like, have some self-respect. Okay, regardless of what happened in the past, at the right time, from a place of clarity, we can assess those things that might have happened, things you did, things they did, all that kind of stuff. But you must gain your self-respect back, and that's not going to happen without self-accountability. Is the relationship producing clarity or confusion? Well, the fact that you have the need to ask that question sounds like it's coming from a place of confusion, right? Are you rebuilding attraction or just pressure? Applying pressure. If you're applying pressure, you're giving yourself ultimatum, you're giving the other person ultimatum, you're deceiving yourself, because clearly that's not working, right? Are you practicing patience, or you're just postponing a decision that you're afraid of, right? And those are the kind of questions that you should be asking, and I think you will gain clarity just from asking those questions. And if you ever have any questions, the chat sessions are open. That's the comment section is open for that. Either during or after the live session, I'm paying attention just in case, and we are open to answering some of those questions. Okay. Now, do not give your marriage emotional deadline. I just called it ultimatum. Okay. That's panic. That's basically panicking. That's coming from a place of weakness. Instead, give yourself a process. Watch patterns, right? Not isolated promises. People can make promises, of course, but you need to look at patterns. And that's still going to consume time, but at least you are being intentional on how much time that's going to consume, how much energy that's going to consume, but you're paying attention to the evidences that are being created nonetheless, right? And you want to measure the participation in terms of, again, this, I have to be careful here, because the idea is not to monitor the other person. If you're going to monitor anything, monitor your self-improvement, your growth, your personal growth. Your personal growth cannot be measured by how the other person responds in the short term. It's going to backfire. You're going to get tired and frustrated. Then you're going to start asking again, how long should you fight? It's because you're not engaged in why. Your own personal why in this life. You're disconnected from self-improvement. That's why you ask these questions. Look for self-accountability. Apologies, they destroy more than they actually build. Go and check. Okay, they actually destroy more than they build. There's strategic positioning where apologies can be useful in personal relationships, but for the most part, they destroy. Okay, practice patience, but never confuse patience with paralysis. Stop trying to control the outcome. Stop trying to manipulate the outcome. Okay, lead yourself through the process. Understand, part of game in life is it's a process. Part of game in life is that there's no guarantee, right? So you don't sit there and be trying to manipulate other people into guarantee, asking them yes, no question. Just answer my question, yes or no. That's manipulation, all right? Because human beings obviously don't operate that way. It's gray everywhere and all types of colors, right? So your power is not forcing someone to choose sides or choose the marriage. Your power is in becoming clear, grounded, attractive, accountable, emotionally intelligent, and prepared to respond wisely to reality. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. If today's lessons helped you, I'd appreciate if you like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. I'll see you very, very soon. And go check out getmymarriageback.com/discovery if you want me to hold on one second. Let me just good morning, Chinya, good to see you. All right, so yeah, so if you want me to help you personally, just go through getmymarriageback.com/discovery. All right, hopefully you've been enlightened, educated. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.